All right. Check, check, check. Welcome back to the GoWinOut podcast. It's officially episode 12, and we're doing things a little bit different today. I have no guest. It's just me by myself here on the podcast. And I've been wanting to do a solo episode for a while. A lot of my friends and associates have been sort of advising me to start getting into more of these solo episodes. So this will be my first one. I hope y'all enjoy it. I plan to do a lot more in the future. But this episode, episode 12, is going to be special. This is the first episode of the year 2025. If you tapped into the last episode 11 with T, I kind of mentioned that I wanted to get into some of these things, but the interview ran for almost 2 hours, and I didn't want to take extra time to go through that, so I decided to save it for this episode. So, with that being said, welcome to episode 12. As I mentioned, this is going to be a reflection episode. I want to go over some of the lessons I've learned over this first, I would say, year of starting and launching this podcast, and just go over some of the reflections that I've been able to think about over the course of this time, and just really share that with you, my audience, right? We're trying to build this community here, so I'm also open to just, share my thoughts with y'all and getting some feedback from y'all as well on how to make this show better or the kind of topics that you want me to cover and sort of get into. So let's do it. I got 10 things that I want to go over on this list. I sort of put this list together, and it really talks about everything I've learned making this podcast from a technical aspect, some of the fears and hesitations that I did, but then I also talk about some of the benefits that I've been able to get out of this journey and going through this whole process. So let's just hop into it. So, number one reflection I want to go over, right, is how and why I started this podcast. I feel like coming back to your why and always remembering why you started to do things is always important because it really grounds you and your purpose and your motivation for doing whatever it is you decide to do. For me, it was doing this podcast that was focused on the nightlife because of all the various experiences that I've had in this space. As some of you have probably heard me talk about before if you watch some of the other episodes. So, why did I start this podcast? For the nightlife community. I really wanted to bring this whole entire community together. Everybody from bartenders, DJs, promoters, club owners, and just the general public as well. Right? I've served in a lot of these different roles throughout my lifetime. As I've said before on the show, I promoted when I was in high school and college. I did that for a few years. So I know what that's like being a promoter out in the streets, networking with people, trying to get people to come to your party, and really just trying to be visible in that space. I kind of know what that's like. I've been bartending this is my 8th year bartending now. So I know all about the pains and the troubles of being a bartender, what that life is like. And then now, most recently, I've become a DJ. So I've been DJing for about 3.5 years. And I'm just a regular person too. So I like to go out, I like to party, and I like to have a good time. And me personally, I know the value that all these elements bring to the nightlife space. But I feel like other people don't really know what it's like, right? You might not have the perspective of a bartender because you don't know what that life is like. You've never really worked there before. But if you are interested in getting into that space and trying to work in the bartending space, then this show is really a resource for you, right? When it comes to DJing, the same thing. When I started DJing, I relied a lot on YouTube, right? Not only just watching people DJ, watching their sets, but I watched a lot of tutorials. But I think just watching DJs sit down and just talk about their life and talk about their story was really helpful as well. In any endeavor, one of the best things to study is actually study other people. Study their lives, study their path, what kind of decisions they made within whatever industry they work in. If you want to work in the same thing, it's best to like read biographies about those folks to understand what kind of mistakes they made, what strategies they did. So you can actually learn a ton just from learning about the people who are in the space that you want to work in, right? So all these different roles I've mentioned, bartenders, club owners, promoters, DJs, we all have something that's at stake, right? That we want to win, we want to be able to come out on top on, whether it's me being a promoter, getting all the best people to my parties, getting the most people to my parties, having those most memorable type of events that people are going to talk about. Or if you're a DJ, you want to have the best sets. You want to really have people connect with your vibe and feel your groove and like the way you play music. You're a bartender. You're trying to get your bartending skills up. You want to perfect your craft, make the best drinks. You might want to get your speed up, or you just might want to know how to relate to people at the bar, how to increase your clientele. These are all the kinds of things that we talk about on this show. I've had um, conversations with some bartenders just out in the field, and we kind of talk about these things. A good friend of mine has a book that she published where she kind of breaks it down how to increase your clientele, how to talk to people at the bar and network and build your customer base. So, again, I wanted to create this podcast as a platform for people to be able to share their story and also help other people in the community, right? Whether it's building connection, increasing your visibility, or just gaining some type of insight from these stories and hearing these stories on a podcast. Again, everyone has something to learn and discover from this platform, and there's going to be some entertainment along the way, right? So we're going to have people coming in here talking about funny stories. We're going to talk about the juicy shit, whether it's sexual based topics, or whether it's about money or some shit that happened that was like a really crazy story. We're going to talk about all that. We're going to make it entertaining, but also insightful at the same time. So what we're ultimately building here is a platform that's going to grow into something amazing. I mean, this is really the seed stages. As I mentioned, this is only the 12th episode. We've been kind of going at a slow clip, but I hope in 2025 to really be able to speed that up and put out episodes a lot more frequently. So, thank you for joining me, and I hope y'all, keep rock with me along the way. All right. Number two reflection. Let's talk about roadblocks and hesitations that I had when I was getting started, right? What are some of the things that I faced that really scared me? And I want to talk about having a bias towards action, right? Because that's really how I got over a lot of those hurdles, a lot of those inhibitions that would worry me about getting started. Having a bias towards action, meaning just leaning into it and just doing the small things, taking the small steps. Because if you take the small steps, you'll find yourself having a lot easier time to just make that next step and just keep on progressing throughout your process. So one of the biggest things that I thought about was just having the information deficit, right? Anytime you're starting something new, when I was just learning how to bartend, I had no idea how to make drinks. I had no idea what the tools were. I had no knowledge of liquor, all the different types of spirits and mixers. What's the difference between a regular base spirit versus a liqueur? I didn't know anything about drink counts. But when I got started, I had a really good coach and a trainer along the way, right? Same thing with this podcast. Anything, like even when I started DJing, there was so much I didn't know. But when I started this podcast, I definitely had an information deficit as well. I had no idea what kind of platforms to use. How do I host a podcast? What's the best camera to use? Like camera settings, angles, all that, lighting, the best recording equipment. I mean, I've invested a lot of money into these microphones so you guys can have good audio and hear me pretty clearly. But I had no idea about any of this stuff, right? So I had to do a lot of research, right? I had to learn how to edit. What was the best program? These are some of the things I was worried about. But I think if you're just resourceful enough, and if you have the courage, like, you can spend the time and learn everything you need to know on the internet. I spend a lot of time on YouTube, Google. I watch a lot of other podcasts that are catered towards content creation and creating podcasts. So a lot of those resources really help me. So if you do want to do something like this, I would suggest just doing your research. Don't worry about having the information deficit. It could be scary, but it's definitely overcomable. Cost was another big problem. Although I didn't have a huge budget, I am doing this by myself with no sponsors. But luckily, I do have a decent job where I'm able to invest some of my extra funds. I have like extra side hustles, like as I mentioned, a bartend, a DJ. So I was able to put some money into some of these things like equipment and stuff. But honestly, like, I probably could have got started with less. But I wanted to have good sound, and I know that I wanted to have a guest on, more than one guest. So I at least invested in 3 microphones. But I didn't let cost that be that big of a problem. But I just sort of bought things along the way, right? Started with one camera. I still only got one camera. I used two phones from my other angles. I started with just two mics. Then I eventually got a third, and I got my board. So cost was a thing, but it wasn't a huge thing. But ultimately, I found that having a bias towards action, it just helped me keep moving forward. First thing I did was I created an LLC and made a logo. And once I did that, I knew I was taking the first steps to get things going on the way, right? I invested in my sign behind me, got the sign put up. I think I got that first before I even got all of my microphone stuff. But just little things, just having that bias towards action. You don't feel like I didn't feel like I had to do everything all at once and get everything all at once. So I sort of just took my time, but again, leaning into action and doing things rather than just thinking about it and kind of just sitting around and wondering, what I should do next. All right. Point number 3, taking the first steps to publish my first episode. So with this one, I definitely had to sacrifice perfect for being prompt, right? I think for me, I was more worried about well, I wanted to put out the content no matter what, even if it wasn't perfect. I wanted to get it out sooner than later. I think in some instances you want quality over quantity, but I felt like putting out the episodes, no matter how good they were, right? I was gonna make them like terrible, obviously, right? But no matter how good they were, I wanted to put them out, and I felt like just putting it out there was gonna make me feel really good about having gotten it done, right? It's gonna be like an accomplishment, and I'm just getting started. Like things will improve with time, right? Just like when I was DJing, like I'm sure all DJs sucked when they first started, right? But as long as you practice and get your reps in and just keep going at it, it will get better, right? But I was pretty nervous about putting out a shitty product. I was worried like, okay, what is the audio going to be like? Is the audio going to suck? Is the picture going to be too blurry, right? So those are some of the things that I was really worried about at first. But because I didn't know what I was doing, I had no idea like how to like work these camera settings. And to be honest, I'm still not the best, right? I can still improve, and I'm still like working with my friends and asking people and taking advice on how to be better. But that was one of the things I was worried about. Um, but I just told myself the product didn't have to be perfect. As long as I can get the product out and have it cataloged and have it marked in history, that's all that mattered if I got it done. Because I would rather get it done and have it be less than perfect than have it sitting on my hard drive for too long or having never gotten out because I just wanted to be a perfectionist, right? All right. On to point number 4. Reflection number 4. How I struggle with keeping up with securing other people's schedules. Cause this was a tough one. A lot of people are very busy. A lot of people really have to make time. I'm also not in Charlotte. Some of you know I stay outside the city, about 30 minutes. So getting people to take time to come out here was kind of tough, right? Especially with the DJs, I think more so because, they have their gigs and everything. They're always moving around. Some DJs are booked every day during the week, right? And then they have other jobs too. So that was a really hard struggle. And this is something that I'm still struggling with, to be honest. But I think, what I'm going to start trying to do is stack my interviews within the same week, kind of have a couple different options available, and not necessarily the same day, but if any one of those interviews falls off or has to reschedule, I might have like some backups to kind of still put some content out that week. So that is one thing I'm going to try to do going forward in 2025. A change I'm going to make to try to improve things. Um, so another thing about with the DJs that was pretty hard. That was kind of hard with them is I like to go out ahead of time and follow them around to their venues, right? So some nights, because of weather or maybe it wasn't a good night for content, um, I found myself postponing those interviews because I wanted to go back just to like kind of capture that content. But I think going forward, that's something I'm not going to do. I'm not going to waste time trying to like go to the club and follow the DJs around. I mean, I'll make a couple, but if I can't make all of them, maybe that's it. Just is what it is. So, all right, what I got next? Let's see. So I'm just always going to be patient with that. Going forward, I think that point number 5. So, perceiving the public receptiveness and respect for the podcast or lack thereof, and how I dealt with, how I react to getting stood up by several of my guests, right? So I think, I don't think I'm not the only one that deals with this. I know there are other podcasts that deal with this, pretty much getting blown off by your guests. I've already dealt with criticism on my podcast before. People might not think that it's a good idea, or they might not believe in the concept. And believe it or not, even a partner I was dealing with at the time didn't really have a lot of faith in my podcast. That really hurt, but I didn't let those negative opinions discourage me from getting started and keep going. Um, you know, I did make adjustments though. I was open to taking feedback. I'm always still open to taking feedback, but all that negative talk, I just kind of let that roll off my back because I believe in what I'm doing. I believe in the vision and all that. So I heard this really cool quote from Alex Harmozy, and it actually talks about how people only root for people who don't need it, right? And I find that to be so true because people tend to root for the people who are kind of already making it, like the people they don't know. And it would be the people who are closer to you that might not support you, even though I get a lot of support from my friends out here. I do have a lot of people that do support me, so I know I do want to recognize that. But I think here and everywhere in all industries, you know, it's because like your friends know you, right? They know what you're capable of, but they might not know your vision and they don't see your potential in your future. So that's one thing I had to keep in mind when making this podcast. So when people were standing me up at first, honestly, that was my initial reaction that, maybe they don't take the podcast as serious or it's not important to them as it is to me. But I always had to just remind myself of my vision, right? Of why I'm doing this, take that one on the chin and allow my patience to win out. Eventually that person would make it around to the interview. I've only had one person who consistently stood me up and I just had to eventually just leave that one aside and just walk away from it. But everyone eventually does come around. But you could have some feelings of, well, people don't, respect the podcast or they don't respect my time. But the truth is, people are busy, right? And it might not be as much of a priority to them as it is to you. But that's okay, right? I mean, as I build the podcast and we build the audience, that might change. So, all right, reflection number 6. This game is a race. If it was a race, it's a marathon and not a sprint, right? So I try not to pay attention to the numbers of views. I think putting out the work is more important to me, regardless of how much viewership it has, in a certain amount of time. I mean, it's still a small channel at this point, right? My most viewed podcast is with episode 3 with Jelena right now, and then my most watched video overall, which is an interview follow around recap with DJ J-Lo. So I think the interview with Jelena at the time of this recording has maybe just under 200 views, and the episode with DJ J-Lo, the follow around recap maybe has almost 500 by this point. Again, I mean, one thing I know about YouTube content that these things have a really long runway, right? I mean, they take time to garner views, but they're also there forever. So at the same time, like, that's still an asset that's going to produce for me like over time. So, even though it might not have enough, like a huge amount of views when it first comes out, but these things, it'll snowball, it'll grow, it'll get bigger and the views will come in. So, but yeah, if I just consistently put out content and just experiment with the way I promote things, then it'll all be fine. It'll all work itself out. Reflection number 7. Okay. So for this one, I realized that those who really support you will show with their actions. And I really want to talk about episode 5 with Sharon Will, because I appreciate all my guests that have come through, that have spent time with me, because I recognize that, they're not getting paid to do this. I mean, right now, there might not be that much of a benefit to them, But those people do believe in what I got going on, and I appreciate all of them, right? But I really want to highlight this particular story because Will and Shay, I've worked with them for years. The owners of Explicit, and these people are busy themselves. They got more than just a club going on. They're into a lot of stuff. But they made a promise to come out here, and they made it. They made it work. I think they maybe only had to reschedule one time, but Will was on the way here, and it was pretty late when they were coming that night. Right? It wasn't like super early in the day. I think he started making his way over here around like maybe 11:30 at night. Um, but then he was initially just coming by himself, but then his fiance wanted to come, so he was already halfway here. And rather than saying just coming by himself, he actually did turn around, go all the way back home, get his fiance, and then brought her. And then we didn't start the interview until like 1 o'clock. And then even still, we went for like almost 4 hours. I think it was almost 5 o'clock in the morning by the time they left. By the time they left, and I'm just saying that to say, you know, them Will going halfway here, turning around, driving all the way back to get his fiance, and then coming all the way back, and then spending that much time with me really shows that people who really support you are gonna show it their action, right? And not just gonna say it. And even when they show up, like they're gonna give you everything that they have to give to you at that moment. So I definitely appreciate them. Another story I want to highlight was my first episode with Fat in the Hat, my boy Fat in the Hat, promoter. My very first episode. He came through, showed me a lot of love, gave me a good interview, but he was on a super tight schedule. He actually had an event to go to that very same night. But he still came and even spent enough time with me where he was just a little bit late to his event and sacrificed some of that time just to kind of give me the time that I needed. So appreciate him. But that's another story about how people who really support you are going to show with their actions, right? And not just with their words. Reflection number 8. For this one, I want to talk about the journey of making this, right? The journey along the way has been so much more important than the destination that I see myself, or when I first created this podcast, or where I thought I would be a year from now. Trust me, because I mean, it's not quite a year yet, but I'm nowhere near where I thought I would be, right? I mean, it's definitely a lot slower progress, but that's okay. But I think the journey has been the best part. All of the skills that I've been able to build along the way, all of the networking I've done, so many people I've met, right? Right? All this has been great. I've learned so many skills. How to edit videos now. Now I know about Adobe Premiere Pro. I had no idea how to do any of this stuff, right? There's still a lot more for me to learn, and I'm still studying and still growing in this space. But at the same time, you know, going along the journey has been the best part. And, I've just been so happy with how I've been able to grow and how I've been able to just, you know, make friends and just grow in the space and just have fun ultimately, right? I have so much fun when I'm sitting down with these people in here and just talking, having a good conversation. And then when I go back and edit the videos and seeing just the raw interactions and the expressions on the face when you talk about certain things or the jokes that are made, all that is, so much fun for me, right? But yeah, I mean, like I said, best parts are the networking, the learning of the new skills, and like I said, having fun along the way. Reflection number 9, where I've been able to draw a lot of my inspiration from. I definitely want to shout out these 3 podcasts that really gives me a lot of inspiration. I watch them a lot. Number 1 is the Road Podcast with Crooked, Jamie, Never, Forever, rest in peace, Never. I think DJ Nice was on there, D Nice was on there, and then now they got Goldfinger on there. So Road Podcast is a good one. On YouTube, Party with Strategy is another one. This is a guy, I think he's up in Chicago. He's a DJ, but he has all kinds of folks on his show. So I love watching his. And the newest one I just started watching is But I Know the DJ. So that's an awesome one. They talk about a lot of technical stuff on there with DJing, talk about crates and music, all that. So Those have been some of the best ones that I've seen. Some of my favorite ones that give me inspiration for my podcast. And to recap on those, that's the Road Podcast, which stands for Reflections of a DJ, Party with Strategy, and But I Know the DJ. Super cool. All right. The last thing I want to mention here, I just want to do some shout outs to the local DJ community here. They've been really helpful with me. Really showing me a lot of love, whether they've either been on my podcast before or they've shouted me out, they've given me advice, or they've just supported me overall, or they've expressed an interest in coming on the show. So these are all the ones I remembered. If I forget you, my bad, man. Just hit me up. It's all good. I'll definitely shout you out. But DJ HD, first and foremost, he was the first DJ I had on my podcast on my second episode. Big mentor of mine. Shout out to DJ HD. Chop and Chew from CNC Productions, episode number 6. They were on as well. Cool dudes, young guys coming up in the game, doing some big things. Watch out for them. Shout out to them. DJ J-Lo, just had him on episode 10. Good homie of mine's. Again, man, thank you for coming through. He hit me up, told me that he wanted to come on the show. He had some things he wanted to get off his chest. So I appreciate you coming, hitting me up and actually coming through and executing, man. Another big homie of mine's, DJ Hef, mentor of mine's. He's supported me a lot. It's given me a lot of good encouragement along the way, talking about the show. I'm going to definitely get him on one of these days pretty soon. So DJ Hef, shouts out to you, man. DJ Concrete, can't forget my boy DJ Concrete, episode number 8. Man, he's helped me out a ton. He's also worked with me on a lot of other stuff, solid selections. As y'all know, as I mentioned, I bartend. I have a private bartending company, so I go through his events a lot. And, I'm selling beer and wine, so appreciate him just also tapping in with me on that end. But definitely coming through the show and keep me busy at his event, man. That's such a huge thing because that lets me know he believes in what I got going on and he supports me as well. So, yeah, definitely go to Solid Selections. I think the next one is coming up on January 21st. At Social Status, I'll be there selling beer and wine. We can't have no liquor there, of course, without permits and stuff like that. But beer and wine will be available. And there's going to be some good DJs. I think he's going to have Big Sway there on this next turn up. But yeah, and then Concrete himself always does a set. So make sure y'all come through January 21st. It's on a Tuesday at Social Status. Next, as I just mentioned, DJ Big Sway, he's coming on the show pretty soon. Haven't gotten around to scheduling yet, but definitely gonna tap in with him. We were trying to lock something in before New Year's, before the end of last year, but wasn't able to get around to it before he left for his vacation. So big shouts out to Big Sway. DJ Alexander, it's my boy. He's actually coming on. We got my next interview planned, so that should be episode 13. If I get this out before that, that'll be episode 13. But DJ Alexander the Great's coming through. You can catch him at XO, Weston every Friday, Cloud every Sunday. That's my boy. I think he's actually might do the first DJ set here. So another thing I'm trying to do to enhance the show is when the DJs come through, they'll definitely do like a little guest set, 15, 20 minutes, whatever it be, maybe 30 minutes. But we're going to turn it up as well. So DJ Alexander coming through. Shouts out to my boy. DJ Fat Boy, another one of my mentors in the game. I met him. I know him through Sports One. He's DJ a lot of other places as well. I think I've opened up for him once or twice at 4800. It's my big homie. He's mainly down there in Columbia, South Carolina, but he does come up to Charlotte every now and then. So shouts out DJ Fat Boy. He agreed to come on the show. I got to make some time to come down to Columbia, though. I'm making some plans to take a trip down there and do a follow around. So we're going to have that in store coming 2025. Definitely, for sure. DJ Pretty the Selector. I know him through my boy KB. He's a DJ. I think he runs Select DJs, his DJ crew. So definitely going to have him come on. He talked about coming on the show, want to do it. Actually, when I first got started, so Pretty, I owe your interview. I got you, big dog. I'm going to tap in with you. I'm going to have you come up here, man. DJ Be Easy. I know you're waiting on me, dog. You told me when I saw you at Busted Speakers, I ain't forgot about you, man. I'm going to definitely take some time to tap in with you. I had your boy J-Lo on here, so that's the DJ that runs New Carolina DJs. We definitely going to tap in, man. I can't wait to get to it. DJ K Smooth 252. He's also coming on the show pretty soon. One of the sickest DJs out here. I just bumped into him at Infinity Live this past Sunday. Just had to remind him, like, yo, I forgot about you, DJ K Smooth 252. Appreciate you, man. Definitely gonna have you come through soon. We're gonna lock in. DJ Triller, my boy DJ Triller. What can I say about this guy? Man, he supports me a lot. He gives me a lot of encouragement every time I talk to him. He gives me good words, man. We've kind of DJed in the same venues a bunch of times. DJ Triller, man, can't wait to get you on. We're gonna definitely tap in. DJ Huncho, met him recently through my boy Finesse. He was DJing at Explicit, so he's tapping in with me. He sent me the DM not too long ago. He's ready to do an interview. I'm gonna tap in with you, bro. You can catch him at King Tut. I'm not quite sure what days he's there, but we can look him up. Tap in with my boy DJ Huncho. But yeah, Huncho, appreciate you, man. I'm gonna get with you. We're gonna schedule that interview. I promise. DJ Masakre, my boy Masakre from next door at Bacau. I gotta have you on. I'm gonna tap in with you. I wanted to get with you when you was doing the stuff at Eden, but we couldn't make it work. But he always comes through when I'm DJing most of the time. Comes and hangs out. My boy DJ Masakre, I owe you a interview, man. But shouts out to you. Two more. DJ Big Cali, my boy out in California. This is one of my best dogs from college. Clark Atlanta University. You know, I big them up on the show all the time. But he's out in LA and Long Beach. He has his own podcast as well. So, DJ Big Cali, one of my boys, always offers me a lot of encouragement, man. Not just with the podcast stuff, but on the DJ tip as well. So, hopefully, man, if I can get you out here one day in Charlotte, man, I would love to have you on. Chop it up, bro. Last one is one of my favorite DJs, DJ Double J. I saw him at Busted Speakers. We chopped it up. And man, every time I see him, first time I met him was actually at Explicit when he was DJing one time. And I told him, he was a big, motivator to me to get started DJing when I was watching him when I was getting started. Just such a genuine person, man. Such a genuine soul. Big shouts out to DJ Double J. And when I saw him at Busted Speakers, man, I was chopping up with him. I told him about the podcast, and he told me, like, yo, just say when you want to have me on. So, man, I already know, like, he's going to tap in with me. Like, DJ Double J, shouts out to you, man. I hope we can schedule something one day soon. I know you're a busy guy, but whenever you're back in Charlotte or the North Carolina, man, the Carolinas, we're going to tap in. So, shouts out to you, man. Appreciate you. So, just some closing remarks. Things that I plan on changing and investing in the future. Definitely, you're going to see a lot more editing in terms of the quality of content I put out. I'm making some investments, some AI tools that's going to help me do a little bit better. Yeah, so you're going to see me making a lot more investments in AI tools to further my editing because, doing that stuff manually, I don't really have the time and the skill set to do that. So you're going to see some better tools, some better production coming out of this channel. And then also, I want to have a lot more entrepreneurs on as well. So as I mentioned, club owners is a big thing for the show. And actually, when I first came up with this concept, having business owners watch this show was the first audience that I had in mind, right? Learning how to open up a club, learning all of the mistakes, some of the technicals, talking about money moves, how to operate, logistics, all of that, whether it's construction, design. These are all the things I want to talk about, right? Because I want this podcast to also be a huge resource for the business owner, the aspiring club owner, entrepreneur, or any kind of entrepreneur in this business, right? So I will be having vendors on and things like that. So in the future, I plan on having a lot more business focused content on this channel for that audience, right? All right. So I'm also working on a website pretty soon as well. So pretty soon you'll be able to go to GoWinOut.com to view the content. And also I will have some exclusive content that will only be on there, that'll be paid. So keep a lookout for that. And yeah, I think that's it. That's really all the reflections I had for this year. I wanted to get to those 10 things, sort of just try to start this solo episode by myself, right? And just see how it works. So, no, there might not be another one of these, but we'll see. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to episode 12. See you on the other side. Peace.